So for this week on CyberSchool, we're continuing our segment on demystifying paging. And this week, we're kind of building on what we spoke about last time, and that's IP-based paging. And now we're getting into all of the different options for zoned IP-based paging. And that's just different ways that you can enable zones or different areas that you want to page to in a purely IP-based system. So with that, what is zoned IP-based paging? And it kind of builds off what we talked about in regular analog-based paging. And zone paging is just being able to page to a specific area or a section of a building or a zone, for lack of a better term. And instead of an analog-based system where you've got, separately wired speakers that consist of a particular zone, now, since all of the devices are IP-based, you're going to be handling your zone creation by use of protocols. For lack of a better term, the network nerds out there are going to be screaming because some of the things that we'll be talking about definitely are not protocols, but we'll call them protocols for conversation's sake. So there's a whole bunch of different options in terms of actually creating a zoned page, and we'll go through the different options and some of their strengths and potentially some of their weaknesses as we go through our presentation today. But the nice thing with IP-based paging as compared to analog-based paging is because you're dealing with different protocols or different ways to page to devices, you have a lot more flexibility and granularity as compared to analog, where with IP-based paging, you can get down to say individual equipment and expand up from there to say 3 speakers, 9 speakers, 27 speakers, so on and so forth. You can really grain it, go down to an individual grain of sand or a whole heap of sand in terms of paging capability. So it makes it really, really powerful as compared to analog based systems where you may be dealing with say 3, 5, 10 zones, something like that, because they're all individually wired together, whereas IP based paging, you're just dealing with some kind of protocol to actually handle all of these different zones. So what different options are going to be out there? Well, there's a whole bunch of different protocols or even software suites that are going to enable and handle this zone creation. And of course, depending on the system or the particular phone platform that you're using, you're going to have different options available. Some of the different phone providers out there, and this is becoming kind of a greater thing in the industry, is providers are supporting what they call as paging groups, which are kind of one-to-many unicast style calls. And those have some strengths and some weaknesses. Another growing one that's getting a lot of adoption in the entire telecom market is going to be multicast capability, just because that's widely supported just across every single type of equipment, whether it's products like SIP speakers, door phones, loud horns to, your regular desk phones. Just about everything is supporting multicast in some form today. But then there's also more specialized software suites such as InformaCast or Synapse that are more specialized towards emergency notifications specifically. And through that, you can also handle that zone creation. So first, let's talk about paging groups a little bit. So of course, these are going to be very platform specific. Not everybody is supporting platform because of some of the potential downsides to it, mainly being that it is known as kind of a one-to-many style call. So of course, you are the caller and there's multiple callees. And, if you think about it, say instead of making, John calling Sally, that's, one person calling another person, you've got a bi-directional audio stream, meaning audio from John to Sally and then Sally to John. So, you basically have 2 streams going. When you're dealing with a one-to-many style call and you're potentially dealing with, say, 25 endpoints, 50 endpoints or something like that, it's one person calling out to a local area network that then receives it and then duplicates that audio stream 50 times to 50 different endpoints. And that can really eat up a lot of network traffic and network bandwidth, depending on how big your group is. Some upsides to this is it makes, very, very easy implementation and creation of everything through the particular phone system. RingCentral is kind of the market leader in this kind of capability because they've had this for, probably 5 or 6 years now. Very long-standing practical feature in there. And on a small scale, this is an absolutely awesome option. Say if you're paging to, less than 10 units at the same time, you're really not going to notice any impact on your network. If you scale that up and you're going to 20, 30, 50, 100, then you can notice some network bandwidth related issues just because you're dealing with those multiple streams. But when you're dealing with stuff on a small scale, it is an absolute awesome option to be able to page to multiple different endpoints. And the nice thing with a lot of different providers is there's no additional fee for some kind of a usage like a feature like this, where it just comes with your usage of the platform. As long as you pay your bill, you get this kind of capability. As we move on towards multicast, which I mentioned is kind of being one of the more adopted options for zoned IP paging recently, is each specific zone is going to be tied to a specific multicast address and port combination. Now, when a lot of people think about this, it's like, okay, it's your standard 192.168 address. No, 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 no. It is a very specific address range that is 224.0.0.0 through 239.255.255.255. Those specific IP addresses are reserved and are only supposed to be used by multicast. So that way you basically tune your devices into one of those addresses and a specific port combination, the combination between the address and port, to be able to pick up this particular multicast stream. And the nice thing with this, to help with network bandwidth, is each device is only going to receive specific multicast that it subscribes to or that it wants to listen to. So that way it can say, reduce the network bandwidth issue out there. And the nice thing with this is, depending on how your network is set up, your actual endpoint, your device IP address, is completely irrelevant to the whole numbering scheme. A lot of the time, multicast can actually jump across LANs or subnets. So say, for example, you're using both the 192 and the 172 address ranges, depending on how your router is configured, that multicast can jump between those two subnets. Not always, but sometimes it can do that. It depends, again, on your router configuration. But the nice thing with multicast is, because it's all done on your local area network, depending on which subnet you're in and which class of addresses you're working with, you can have thousands of devices all picking up this one particular multicast broadcast with little to no impact on your network bandwidth. Because the way that it works is it's a single stream of audio that goes out to the network, and based on the switches routing table, so the actual devices that connect everything together, your network switches have a record of every single device and what multicast addresses they want to listen to. So the single multicast stream comes into a particular endpoint and it sees, okay, my ports 1 through 5 want this, and 6 through 20 don't. So then it just feeds that audio off to the individual devices with little to no impact on the rest of your equipment out there. So it is absolutely perfect for dealing with network bandwidth at scale. But one downside to multicast is it's typically regulated and stuck to a local area network, and getting it across, say, different sites that are connected, say, by a VPN or an MPLS connection, are possible, but can be difficult, just because multicast is designed to be stuck on a local area network, and multicast is not typically routable across the wide area network or the open internet. As we move forward to InformaCast, that's one of the big software suites that's available right now, and kind of a dominator in terms of emergency notification. So in this platform, all of your products are going to be configured as IP speakers. Even if it's, say, something like a strobe that is not a speaker, it's still configured and referred to as a speaker in the InformaCast environment. Once the devices are added into the system, they can be put into different groups, and one device can be in many groups. There's no limit to how many groups a particular device can be in. And the nice thing with InformaCast is you can actually control the volume of the announcements through InformaCast itself. So that way your emergency style announcements can always be played at max volume, regardless of the actual device's setting. And then for regular announcements, you can just have them play at particular volumes. You get a lot more control out of the actual endpoints through the InformaCast system. And for actually triggering the messages, of course, you can dial into specific numbers, either through direct registration with InformaCast or by calling through trunks on different platforms that you're working on, or just triggering them directly through the InformaCast web interface or through their different applications. And the nice thing with InformaCast is it's built for kind of a wider scale. So it's really good on a wide area network, a WAN style situation. So it has a huge adoption by different, multinational and gigantic corporations and also universities, just because universities can typically be spread out across a giant network or sometimes even different satellite campuses. And InformaCast can work there and then also get the notifications out via SMS or different capabilities to students that might have left the actual campus. So it provides a lot of capability in terms of getting the notifications out and isn't stuck to a local area network like Multicast would be. And as we finally get to the other kind of major player in emergency notification is going to be Intrado's Synapse. And Synapse is very similar in terms of how InformaCast works, where groups are created and then devices are registered to the platform as speakers. And then you get group and speaker control through the Synapse platform. And of course, just like InformaCast, it allows you to make the actual announcements directly through the Synapse Revolution software suite or by dialing specific numbers. I kind of like to refer to these two as, a Coke and Pepsi style option. They basically have, a similar feature set. Some are better than others, but a lot of the times you're getting, a very, very similar product feature set between the two. So is there really a better option or a best option when we're talking about IP-based paging and zoned IP paging? Well, it kind of depends what you want out of the system and what you're already paying for. If you're using, say, a provider that already supports paging groups and you're not dealing with something that's a huge scale, paging groups can be a really, really great option. But if you're dealing with a larger scale of endpoints that you're trying to get these notifications through, say 25 speakers or something, that's going to potentially eat up a lot more bandwidth. And you might want to look at combining different options or going with a different option entirely for your zoned paging. Multicast is really, really powerful and widely adopted and free to use as long as you buy the equipment, because it's widely supported on just about every single tech product out there when it comes to VoIP and IP-based calling. Just about anything out there, all the manufacturers in terms of regular desk phones are going to be supporting it. But a downside is it's going to be LAN or local area network specific. So it's really stuck on a local area network, and it's difficult and cumbersome and requires a lot of complex networking to get it to jump from different sites. Then if you're dealing with products like InformaCast or Synapse, they're awesome. They're really kind of the go-to option if you're dealing with multi-site scenarios. You're dealing with, say, different buildings or different facilities, and you want to be able to page across these simultaneously. But with all of that super cool feature set and all the capabilities, there's an additional subscription fee that you're going to be paying just because, these aren't, say, one-time purchase style systems. You got to buy the system and then you got to pay the subscription fee to continue utilizing it. You get a lot of features with it, but that's also something to consider. If you're really looking for another subscription-based option to get all of these additional features. So finally, just zoning in an IP-based system. Of course, as we saw today, there's a multitude of different options available depending on the requirements of the particular facility. And of course, you're going to want to pick your option based on what you need. If you're dealing with, say, 3 or 4 speakers and in a single location, you really might not need to opt for something like InformaCast or Synapse. Really powerful options, but based on your requirements and the necessities of your particular system, it might not be right for you. You might be fine with just a regular paging group or local area multicast. But if you're dealing with something at a huge scale, or you're dealing with potentially hundreds or thousands of endpoints across multiple different locations, you might opt for something like Single Wire's InformaCast or Intrado's Synapse Revolution to be able to page across those different multiple facilities. But multicast is another really good option if you're dealing with paging at a particular location, just because it's really good for anything on a local area network and is widely supported by probably the majority of the equipment that you already have, because it's free and open source to use, and it's again widely supported across the majority of telecom equipment manufacturers, whether it's IP endpoints, it's regular desk phones, or what have you. It's multicast is probably going to be supported on your products.
Thank you for watching this edition of CyberSchool. If you have any questions, please get in contact with our sales department. They are available by email at sales@cyberdata.net or by phone at 831-373 2601 extension 334. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe for more content like this from CyberData.